Hello and welcome to the channel today. Hopefully you enjoy the review to come, which is where I'll be talking about the one, the only, A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, the second instalment of The World of A Song of Ice and Fire. And so in 2022 I started my A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones quest. I'd never read any of the books or watched any of the series before, and so I've read book 1, 2 and 3 and of Fire and Blood in 2022, and then I watched season 1 of A Game of Thrones. And so I did a review for A Game of Thrones with my brother Ed over on The Brothers Gwyn if you want to check that out. And then he's not read book 2 yet, and he doesn't intend to anytime soon. He really enjoyed A Game of Thrones, but it's just not high on his list. And then I left it quite a few months because I didn't really enjoy season 1 of A Game of Thrones. I absolutely loved the book, but I didn't enjoy the season. But then recently I've binge watched season 2, 3 and 4 of the Game of Thrones seasons, and I really want to talk about book 2, A Clash of Kings. And so there will of course be minor spoilers for A Game of Thrones, because as in book 1 A Game of Thrones, because to say the premise of book 2 and kind of where characters are beginning, you have to say where they left off in book 1. So if you have no idea what happens in Game of Thrones book 1 or season 1, do not watch this video if you don't want spoilers. But if you're in the other probably larger category, then please watch on and hopefully you enjoy the video to come. And then before I get further into this, I just want to say, if you want to hear an awesome reading of A Clash of Kings and also a great review overall, do go check out Mike Book Reviews' channel. He did an awesome review of A Clash of Kings, and there's an awesome opening where he edited together a sequence and he read out some quotes from A Clash of Kings, and he did an absolutely brilliant job. It's really immersive and I loved that. So yeah, do go check out that. It'll probably be a much better review than what I'm about to talk about. I'm just going to go over some of our main thoughts. And so Clash of Kings, obviously we follow on from the shocks that end A Game of Thrones. And my overall thoughts are, I'd say this book, it really takes the foundations that are laid in book 1 and then elevates literally everything on every single level. The characters reach new heights. The plot really furthers, and as those foundations have been laid, the mysteries continue. There are many more mysteries here, but we have some revelations and we're getting closer and closer, and far more of the world building and puzzle pieces are beginning to fall into place. And I absolutely love that George R. R. Martin has such a fleshed out world which is living and breathing, and I believe it's one of the many reasons why people absolutely adore this world and his writing. And I'm going to talk about my favourite character, Tyrion. In book 1, I really enjoyed Tyrion, but after all the hype I'd heard about him, I was a little bit disappointed. But then book 2, Tyrion, I take it all back. He has become one of my top 10 favourite characters of all time. So at the end of A Game of Thrones book 1, Tyrion is made Hand of the King. And book 2, he really just comes into his own. He's given some influence, a power that he can actually do, use his intelligence and, as I said, this newfound power. And the question, what is he going to do with it? Is he going to enjoy it? And all the threats that come along with it, because with power comes responsibility. And in Game of Thrones, usually death. And so Tyrion has got to be very careful. And his character in particular, I thought, was just absolutely outstanding. The way that his character grows, and we see so many different sides to him. I love that George R. R. Martin, better than almost every single author, provides us so many complex characters, and he manages to do it with side characters in a scene or two, but he also manages to keep that growth going with the main core cast as they go through the book. They really just expand, and we learn more about their history, which reflects who they are in the present, and we see these pivotal moments that really change who they are. And so Tyrion in particular is one I'd highlight as George R. R. Martin's brilliant writing. But then we get some more POVs in A Clash of Kings book 2. So we have the added POVs of Theon and Sir Davos, and I absolutely loved both of them. Sir Davos is not in book 1, so this is introducing us to a whole new cast of characters as he is following Stannis, who is vying to be one of the kings of Westeros, and he sees himself as the one true king. And so Sir Davos is following him, and that is a brilliant journey, and the finale to that kind of arc is absolutely brilliant in A Clash of Kings. And then Theon, we did meet him in book 1, we know him, but he's not a major character. And then in book 2, obviously he's a perspective, so he becomes far more major, and his story is absolutely shocking, and the pivotal moments with his as well, whilst I wouldn't say satisfying, it is really powerful, and it makes the story so engaging, and it really just shows that nothing is off the table when it comes to George R. R. Martin. And then all of the other characters that we see in book 1, Sansa, Arya, Jon, all of these characters, Daenerys of course, they are great. I'd say Daenerys is probably the one where Her story isn't boring, I wouldn't say, but I'd just say that her story, you kind of see what's coming along, other than the ending of season 2, which I'd say season 2, book 2, and it's absolutely brilliant. And so, yeah, they are my main thoughts for the book. But now let's talk about the program, so because I want to kind of compare the seasons. And so I did not enjoy season 1 of A Game of Thrones. I thought they're absolutely brilliant moments. Sean Bean as Ned Stark is fantastic. Obviously, Kit Harington as Jon Snow, Richard Madden as Robb Stark. They're all absolutely brilliant, and I think the casting directors did an excellent job. But I thought the writing was very off, and where the books are so subtle in the way that they explore kind of the mysteries and the dialogue, I thought it was very clunky, season 1. But season 2, everything changed. I thought it was absolutely incredible. The dialogue was subtle and sharp and cutting. The characters seemed so more dynamic and complex. It was just such a change around, and I'm not sure if it was to do with budget or change of writers, or I don't know. I have no idea, but it just felt like such a different series, and it was absolutely extraordinary. It really kicked off what I think season 3 and 4 follows, because I thought all 3 of those seasons were absolutely extraordinary. And so I was so glad, because that turnaround, I was quite upset, thinking I was going to love Game of Thrones season 1, but then I didn't. But then season 2 really turned it around and made it all worthwhile. And while some of the action scenes leave things to be wanting, whereas in the later seasons they are absolutely brilliant, I'd say. Season 2, the action isn't as good, but that doesn't really matter, because the best moments are kind of the exchanges of dialogue and the interactions between characters. So whilst it's not the perfect season, it's up there with the very best that I've ever watched. And so, yeah, they are my main thoughts for book 2 and season 2. I think I prefer book 2 because, of course, it's a chunky book and you've got so much more to dive into. When it's a book that you're not enjoying, big books can be a slog, and it's hard to get through them. But when you're loving a book, the bigger the better. And I absolutely love how much there is to dive into with the characters, the histories, and the mysteries, all in A Clash of Kings. I think it's absolutely brilliant. In season 2, I think it did a great job of taking what needs to be in season 2. There's bits where I thought, I wish that was in the series, but I totally understand why it's not, because it would have to be 30 episodes, each one an hour long, and I don't think any program can ever do that. But yeah, I thought that season 2 was brilliant, and I thought book 2 was even better. And so, yeah, I'm just singing praise for A Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. And I did a review of this because I did a short review, and then I asked people if they wanted me to do a longer one on the channel. And the vote was overwhelmingly yes, they'd like to hear my thoughts on A Clash of Kings. And I think, obviously, there's a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire fans out there. And I know for a few years people couldn't bear to talk about this world or the programmes because of how season 8 finishes. And I've not watched it, but I know that people are not happy with it. And it's pretty decisive that it's almost unanimous people don't like the final season. But a few years have passed, and so I hope that people can look back on these books and seasons and think, yeah, I do love them, and I love what they did there. And especially as I'm joining the bandwagon, I think when I mentioned about a year or two ago when I was going to read these, basically everyone said, the books aren't finished and the season is rubbish, the last one. But I thought, you know what? People are falling in love with these characters and the world. And so, of course, whilst it's sad the books aren't finished in this season, the programme didn't finish off well, we can be thankful for what we have. And I really am, having read the first 3 books and watched the first 4 seasons, absolutely incredible. But I won't go too far into my thoughts for the others, because hopefully, if you enjoy this video, I will do a review for A Storm of Swords and compare it to season 3 as well. And so, yeah, Clash of Kings, in short, absolutely loved it. More than 5 out of 5 stars. It was my first or second favourite read of 2022. It changes depending on the day. But yeah, absolutely loved it. And season 2 as well was absolutely brilliant. One of the best programmes I've ever watched. And so yeah, I really loved it. And I cannot wait to follow these characters even further into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. But everyone, hopefully you enjoyed. And stay safe. Valar Morghulis.